Hey, so I just finished watching all 10 episodes of the miniseries Teacher, and it was extremely good, like way better than I was expecting. It was very interesting seeing like the psychological processes of its two main characters, which are the abuser and the victim in very complex, like how would I describe the case? Because like it follows under such technicalities that like it's hard to label it, and especially since certain information doesn't even come out until later into the show, that I'm not sure how much information I should give. uh the show makes a couple of interesting arguments against and for uh what's happening on screen, but by the end it becomes clear that what's gone on in the show is the main characters are in a relationship. I feel like I'm stuttering a lot. I'm sorry. I guess because I'm trying to piece together how I want to do this review, uh and what exactly I'm trying to say. uh Maybe I should just start over. I feel like this is a terrible start to the review. Yeah, how do I structure even saying what's been going on? Because it's weird, it's hard to talk about. And it's especially hard trying to find the right words to talk about it. And that's one of the things that this sort of show's topic is about. Uh, for example, the show is mostly about uh, this teacher who is in a relationship with a much younger high school student. And normally you would think this would be kind of average, like Me Too movement type show, and it would be about some guy who's sexually abusing some girl and her coming out and him having nothing to defend himself because he's a creep, and it being something like that. But the show's concept actually flips this on its head and goes after a minority that isn't shown about as much, which is instead of there being a male perpetrator, it's a female teacher and a male student. And because of the sort of toxic culture of that dynamic, it makes it hard for the victim to even realize that he is a victim in the first place. Especially since he almost feels like he's the perpetrator because of the things he's done and the way that guys are. And on the other side, the perpetrator doesn't feel like the perpetrator because of the way women are seen as the ones that need protecting. So the whole gender identity thing makes for fascinating viewing because when you get down to it, that's not the way things are because of the way things played out. And she took advantage of him because he looked up at her as a role model, and she was like 20 years older than him, and she shouldn't have abused her power and groomed him the way that she did. And it's just very interesting. And they both had these defenses at the beginning for why their relationship was okay. Like, well, he's the age of consent. He's 18 years old. Uh, it's consensual. Uh, there were other things I remembered. He started it. Uh, and there's like other stuff too. I'm trying to think of like the non-spoilery stuff. And then when you get in later, you start to see like how she is kind of in this sociopathic type of denial where she's sort of leading him into doing things in a very subtle way that the show doesn't really bring up until later, but you as the viewer get very uncomfortable as you watch it unfold, where she does things for him to sort of entice him to make these sort of decisions that are more for her benefit instead of his, to kind of encourage him to continue down this rabbit hole relationship that he may or may not want, but she's gonna kind of guide him to make him think that he wants it more. And it's very interesting. Kate Mara has this very cold demeanor in most things she's in, so it kind of made her perfect for this project. Uh, it kind of feels like this was handled in a very similar way to BoJack Horseman, where it takes the route of like, just because they're like, just because this group of people are like bad, thought of as bad people, doesn't mean that they're not still people. Like, they are still people, even so. And it's not even so much in this case that they're bad people, period, just more so people that did bad things, it feels like. Because I'm not quite sure if, like, it seems like she can't even understand what she's doing with the scenes where she's to herself or with him, because she has all these justifications for what she's doing that it seems like in her own eyes and sometimes to the viewer that it does make sense why she's doing the things she's doing, and why it all seems perfectly innocent to her, and why you could see, she sees herself as the victim as well, and why it's hard for her as it is for him, but it's clearly her that's doing the wrong. Uh, Not to say that perpetrators are just as hurt as victims. That's obviously not the case, but the show does a good job at making you sympathize with both people and seeing both their perspectives, even though one is clearly more just than the other, which they make a good job at hammering down at the very end of the show, where it's like, all right, now that we've gotten to the end, now we're gonna make you solely back down the no, the now we're gonna make you solely support the victim, because, like, you know, we've done enough showing you the other perspective. uh and I think they handled it pretty well at all the beats of the story. I honestly thought that it was gonna fumble at some point, and it didn't. My only complaint for the show is, since it's a mini series, all it's too short. They should have delved into the characters more. I wish I got a better idea of what was going on in their heads. Like, was she just a full-on sociopath who is like faking her emotions, or like, is she legitimately struggling with everything that's going on and just an unhappy person that wants to die and is like kind of having her own little Mel breakdown tragedy happening that on the sideline. But yeah, I'm glad that the show addresses like that minority of like male victims of uh sexual manipulation and things like that, because you don't really see that a lot, since, you know, men are usually thought of as like stronger and tough and all these things, and usually the perpetrators. So it's interesting to finally get that perspective, because I've been wanting a show to address that for a long time, because I've seen things like that in real life and wondered why it was never addressed. um yeah, I could go into personal stories, but I'd rather not. uh yeah, I guess I'd give the show out of 10, 9.5 would do. If you have not seen A Teacher, it's on FX on Hulu if you'd like to watch it.